Hey everybody, this is Tom from VermiBag. I haven't put any videos up in a couple of weeks. Life's been pretty busy, a lot of things going on, and I really haven't had any new content per se. And I mean, I hate to just put up videos just to put up videos. I mean, you can only watch me feed worms so many times. It doesn't change that much. So I may be putting out some little bit different videos here sometime as soon as I get a little bit extra time. I've been dealing with a lot of coffee grounds now. I get so many from work that I'm trying to figure out a better way of using it. Even mixing it in my bedding, I'm tending to have excess coffee grounds, so I'm throwing it out in my outdoor compost bin, which is fine, but I'm just wondering if there's a way I can use them a little bit more efficiently in my indoor bins. But I've been thinking quite a bit lately about the VermiBag Tote and the VermiBag Breeder. And the VermiBag Tote's a really neat system. You know, it's shallow and flat. It doesn't have, a flow-through system on it. It's not a flow-through system. So you have to basically empty everything or do a migration method on it. But when I start thinking about the other VermiBags and the way people are harvesting a lot of the other systems, we tend to have the systems, only half full or 3/4 full when we empty them. And so that added depth isn't necessarily critical to have that added depth. If you're just going for really fine castings, you may want it because it'll give the material a longer period to really be processed before you harvest it. But if you're not as concerned about that, more concerned about getting a larger worm population, I'm starting to think that we can go shallower actually and still have a very productive system and still do a flow-through system. So basically like the breeder bag, which the breeder bag I liked, but it was more of a liner than anything else. So it didn't have all the advantages of the air flow, that goes around the system. Since you set it inside of a mortar tray, it kind of defeated the purpose of the bag in the first place. So I haven't been making them right now. I'm trying to make something that'll work a little bit better. And that's what I'm thinking this system that I'm working on now is going to be. I'm basing it off of the breeder bag, which was a big system. I mean, the size of a mortar tray, I think it's probably around three square feet or something like that. But the system I'm working on is going to be that concept. It's going to be more of a tray type system. I figure about 14 inches deep, 13 inches deep. But the way I have it drawn out right now, it's going to be over 4 square feet. So I mean, that's a huge system. That's bigger than the VermiBag Max or the Urban Worm Bag. It's actually the second largest fabric bag that's available. So I'll show you a couple sketches that I did up, kind of give you the idea, at least the conceptual of what I'm looking for. So this is what I'm looking that I'd end up with. This will be either a wood stand or a PVC. I'm going to make it initially with a wood stand, but I know you can use a PVC. It'll just be a little off center in the middle. But basically the system's width is going to be probably somewhere around 19 inches. And then the length from one end to the other end here is going to be about 36, 35, 34, something like that. And then the depth of this thing, I'm assuming it'll probably be somewhere around 13 inches when I get done. And that should be deep enough to allow for a flow-through system and for you can harvest it. And there'll be a harvest panel on the bottom of this thing, a smaller one. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. And again, this system you'll have to be using fairly processed material. You couldn't use the trash bag concept that I have with the big chunks of cardboard, because there's not going to be enough time to go from the top down to the bottom and process that material. So you're going to have stuff that's actually shredded pretty good when you put in the material. Otherwise you're going to end up with a lot of unprocessed material down here that you're going to have to recycle. And what's actually dictating the size of this more than anything is actually the width of the fabric that I have. So I'm trying to take advantage of the fabric and use all of it. So if the width of this is 19 inches, then I'll be able to do 2 tops pieces within 1 yard of material, which is a big deal because otherwise I have about 15, 16 inches of waste every time. So it's going to be almost 100% the size based on the material I have available to take advantage of it, keep the cost down as much as possible. And that's part of the reason here too. I'm trying to make another bag similar to the Minimus that's much lower cost, easier to make, and still high quality. But I really think this system is going to be pretty neat. I'm not sure the type of material to use on it yet, whether I use a Cordura or an Oxford material like the Minimus is made out of, similar to the Urban Worm Bag, that type of material. If I do that, that's a non-breathable material, so I'd make the top breathable. And I may make this too also with out of a Cordura that breathes a little bit, and then I put a non-breathable top on it, so they'll kind of counteract each other just a little bit. So, it's conceptually, I think it's a pretty neat system. The harvest panel, the area that you pull the harvest panel out of, or the material out of the harvest panel, is going to be very similar to the Mammoth. Anybody that has a Mammoth, it's very similar. I'll show you what the bottom of that will conceptually look like anyway. So this would be looking down if you had your bag open and you're looking straight down in it. These would be the areas here that angle up to each of the corners. And this would be the slit that's in the bottom of the system that the castings would come out of. Now I have to put this strap in the center, otherwise this thing would spread apart. But it's trying to decide how wide I need to make this strap, because you don't have to worry about, like on the VermiBag Mini, Max and all those, the bottom opening up, because it's circular. So it's a closed circle, so it can't open up anymore. But on a rectangular slot like this centerpiece could, if you put weight in it, it's just going to open up wide and you're going to have all the material falling out. So I'm going to have to put a strap here on the section to hold the center together a little bit. And then I can make these slots actually pretty small where you're going to actually access the castings, because when you put the weight on here, they're actually going to open up a little bit. Then you just reach up inside here and pull out your castings. So I'll show you the material that I'm thinking about trying to make on this, and I'll hopefully, be able to try and work on one of those this weekend, get some type of a first prototype and stuff out. So let's take a peek at the material. Okay, there's two types of material I'm thinking about trying to use. The blue one on the left is actually the Oxford material. And this is a coated, PVC coated material, so it doesn't breathe at all. And it's the same material I make the Minimus out of, and like I said, it's very similar to what the Urban Worm Bag's made out of. So, it's a good material, it's strong, and it works well. And I've been having good luck with using a combination of non-breathable and breathable materials, like the Minimus. The lid is breathable, but the body itself is not, and the harvest panel is breathable. The other material here is actually a Cordura 500, which is a real pliable material, much more pliable than this Oxford, so it's going to be easier to work with. But even though this is a lighter, this is a 600D, and this here's a 500D, this is actually a much stronger material. This stuff's almost indestructible. But this material is actually going to breathe an awful lot more. So if I make the body out of this material here, you're definitely going to have to watch the sides of the bag and probably add additional moisture from time to time. And just keep an eye on it. And I'd probably make the lid actually a non-breathable material, again, to kind of counteract the breathability of the sides. So I'm going to go ahead and make up a prototype kind of out of each one of these. And they're both going to be pretty crude. But once I get them together, I think you guys will be able to have an idea of what it's going to look like. So this is Saturday morning. So I'm going to try and post this video probably this morning or this afternoon. And since this is a long weekend, I'm hoping that I'll be able to kind of get one of these prototypes done sometime this weekend. And my sketches are kind of vague. You look at them, you may not be able to conceptualize what I'm trying to do. But once I get this first prototype, you'll kind of see the direction I'm going. And I appreciate comments and stuff and see what you think on something like this. It's going to be a big little system. Kind of strange because it is going to be a small system, because since it's so shallow, you're going to be able to make the stand pretty small, fairly short. Another neat thing about it is, since the system's so shallow, you're going to have a ton of room underneath it to harvest. So you're not going to be none of this where you have to climb down on your belly to get at the harvest panel. You're going to have about 2.5 to 3 feet of space. So you can actually just sit in a chair and harvest this thing. It'll sit up, and the stand's still pretty small. And since the stand is so small, it's going to be super stable too. So there's a lot of neat benefits, I think, to this system, as long as it works out the way I think it's going to work out. And so we'll go through. I don't have exact dimensions or anything right now, so I'm just going to kind of, put one of these together, and I'm sure going to mess it up big time. and then I'll work with the second one and maybe a third one and stuff. But again, I appreciate any comments down below, and hopefully in a day or so I'll have another video and I'll have you kind of a preliminary prototype of this thing. I just don't know what to name it yet either. You know, I started with all these M's. I got the Minimus, the Max, the Mini, you know, the Micro. So I guess it's a mini mammoth. I don't know. It is shaped an awful lot like a mammoth, but much smaller, probably about a little over half, not quite half the size. But again, 4.5 square feet, that's a huge system. I mean, that can support, you know, 8 pounds of worms pretty easy. So anyway, that's all for right now. I'll get working on this here the next day or so, and hopefully have a prototype for you guys to take a peek at in a couple days, and let me know what you think. This is Tom from VermiBag. Till tomorrow, ciao.